friends. Welcome back to the Crooked Spoon. I'm so glad you're here. In today's video, I'm going to show you a fun twist on banana bread. Follow along.
I find this recipe really easy. It's something you could whip together before the kids get home from school or easily on a Saturday morning for a good breakfast. We're starting with 1 stick of unsalted butter at room temperature. I've talked in other videos about how we should try to give ourselves enough time to have the butter come to room temperature on its own. It really does make for a fluffier product in the end versus warming it up in the microwave. I'm now going to add 200 grams of light brown sugar. Using brown sugar over granulated sugar gives a really nice sort of caramel taste, and it definitely makes for a moister bread in the end. We're going to cream the butter and the sugar, and you really can't overdo this stage. The longer you cream butter with sugar, the more air gets incorporated, and it always ends with a lighter and fluffier quick bread in the end. So I do encourage you to cream that butter and sugar for a good 4 to 5 minutes if you have the time. I'm beating 2 eggs, about 100 grams of egg, also at room temperature. The warmer the eggs, the warmer the butter, the more air will get incorporated when we're beating it in. And the ultimate goal here is to have a nice, light, fluffy banana bread. I'm measuring out 6.5 grams of vanilla extract. If you're interested in that particular brand, please look at my show notes below. And the eggs and the vanilla are going to be added in stages. This is important to give the butter enough time to absorb all of those eggs. So I am doing it over about 3 to 5 minutes. We always want to scrape down the sides of our bowls. KitchenAid mixer is fantastic. It does all the work, but it is important to scrape the sides down when you're working with butter and eggs. Baking is chemistry after all, and the recipe requires those exact measurements of all the ingredients. So we don't want to waste anything on the side of a bowl. Once the eggs are fully incorporated, I'll add my vanilla. And after another few minutes, let me show you what we have here. Nice and fluffy, very homogeneous. A good base mixture for our dry ingredients. This scraper that I'm using is so awesome in that it's also heat resistant. Rubbermaid, I'll include that in the show notes below as well. It's very versatile in the kitchen. Okay, so when you have banana bread on your menu, I am running a home bakery, it's really important to always have ripe bananas, bananas sort of with those leopard spots on them. So when I buy a large bunch of bananas at the supermarket and keep them until they're ripe, I do freeze them in the end because at any point during the week, I might need to make a banana bread for a customer. So I have about 4 or 5 bananas that I've defrosted from my store of bananas in the freezer, and I've mashed them up. And this recipe specifically says not to mash them too much. It's nice to have a chunk or two, if that's your preference, to make that bread moist. So I've coarsely mashed them, and I've added them to my mixing bowl. And you can find all sorts of tricks when it comes to bananas, whether you want to ripen them faster or whether you want to sort of impede the ripening process. I love getting little tips like that on other YouTube videos, whether you separate them or keep them in a bunch. I've seen ones where you put them in a bag with an avocado to help ripen, or I've seen videos where you wrap the stems in foil to impede the ripening process. It's really great to have these tips in your home kitchen. So now I'm getting together my dry ingredients. I'm using all-purpose flour, um, baking soda, kosher salt, and again, I'll include this recipe in the video description below. I love to share my recipes with you. It's not just about technique, it's about uh, tested and trusted recipes to pass along. The baking soda is going to help rise the dough as the eggs will. And the all purpose flour, again, is very accessible for most kitchens. You don't need to use a cake flour or pastry flour for this recipe. I've just set my oven temperature to 350 degrees, giving it a chance to preheat, and I'll quickly whisk my dry ingredients together just to incorporate them. Some of my recipes require sifting the dry ingredients in, but again, this is just a quick bread. We don't want to overmix our batter in a true muffin method. So I'm just adding my dry ingredients to the banana and egg and butter mixture. And I just have my KitchenAid on stir, that first speed setting. I really just want to moisten the dry ingredients, not to overmix them. Scraping down the sides of the bowl, getting all of those ingredients to mix. Now, what drew me to this recipe was that it did not ask for a 9 by 5 loaf pan, which I think is the traditional way of making a banana bread. I love that it was asking for an 8 by 8 square pan. And that has made all the difference. It really is a nice way to serve a banana bread. I love providing my customers this 8 by 8 panned bread. And it's a really nice way to serve and eat the banana bread at home. Sort of like a cornbread, being able to split it, you could grill it, you could add butter, jam, cream cheese, even peanut butter. Lots of options. So the dough is very thick, and I'm going to spread it into my 8 by 8 pan with my liner. These liners have been a great purchase for me. They actually are liners for your air fryer, and it's the perfect size, and it allows me to take the loaf right out of the pan and put it into a bakery box for my customers. And I'll include that link in the show notes below as well. Much easier than having to pre-measure parchment paper with the overhang. Um, these inserts come right out. I'm going to make sure I'm smoothing. There's me scraping every last bit out of the bowl, right? It just gets wasted in the bowl. We want it in the pan. I am a scraper. So I'm going to smooth this out, make sure the top is nice and flat, because before it goes into the oven, I'm going to add one more ingredient. This recipe adds sprinkled granulated sugar on the top of the loaf before you put it in the oven. And I love that because while it's always nice to have that extra bit of sweetness, because this batter actually isn't too sweet. It's the bananas that provide a lot of the flavor, and that light brown sugar makes for such a mellow sweetness. But this adds such a nice crunch and sort of a crust to the top. It's just lovely. So 1 to 2 tablespoons of sugar sprinkled over the top. And we're going to put it in our 350-degree oven for about 45 minutes, always keeping an eye on it. And let's see what we have. A beautiful square banana bread.
Thanks so much for watching, friends. I'll see you in the next video.
If you enjoyed my video today, please like and subscribe, The Crooked Spoon.